We've done two parts to this already. There is no end in sight because there's a lot of impact freshmen to talk about this year. Haven't spoken about Jason Marshall yet. That changes right now. Big-time corner prospect for Florida, number 28 overall. So he was a five-star kid. Prototype size, man. 6'2", 180. A lot of times you recruit them and you bring them in and you have to develop them a couple of years before they have the prototype size. Not Jason Marshall. He's just one you can go say, oh, he looks like that in high school, does he? Okay, well, we got room for him in Gainesville. He enrolled early. He's a really good program guy. Okay, a lot of people speak very highly of him, kind of the same way they did like Pat Surtain. When he came into Alabama, he was a program guy, not a guy you have to worry about a whole lot. And also, on top of that, he's got the five-star attributes. He is a self-starter. It's a lot of the good stuff that you hope to hear about early enrollees. Listen, he could be the corner opposite Elam this year. He could start at nickel for them. He's going to be a player. This is a 3-and-out type player, and so you want to get as much out of him as early as you can. You cannot win without elite defensive back talent. I know everyone focuses on wide receiver. Well, guess what that means you got to be able to do? You got to be able to match up with them. And so in this league especially, you look at what Georgia has, you look at what LSU and Alabama have, you're going to have to match up with them. You got to have kids like this. Florida's had them, and they got another one here in Jason Marshall. Go all the way out to the West Coast. A man by the name of Corey Foreman. I did not say boy or young man. I just said flat out man. Corey Foreman was the number 1 overall player in the country this past recruiting cycle. And he committed to USC. That's big. He stayed home. This guy was at one time committed to Clemson. He had Alabama, Georgia, Oregon. He had all these programs. LSU was in this thing, really, really deep into it. But USC keeps him at home. This was a massive win for USC, just purely in terms of optics. It was a massive win. But Foreman is a guy, if you know anything and you listen to our West Coast folks talk about him, he's very polished technically. Now, he has an elite blend of speed and size and power, but he's not raw. It's not a kid you would look at and say, give him a year in a college program. He's a guy they think can come in and play right now at USC. So I'd be surprised if we did not see him as an impact player for the Trojans this year. But also, think about what this would do for USC recruiting if they take the number 1 kid in California and in the country and they keep him in state, and then he's on the field early. He's earned the right to be on the field early, and he's showcased very early on. You get to take that and you get to show it to a bunch of other kids and say, hey, imagine a world where it's once again cool to stay in state and not go 3,500 miles away to play your college ball. That could be you. It's Corey Foreman. It could be you. So again, if you want to see a rise on the West Coast, you're going to have Southern Cal as part of it. Cross your fingers, Corey Foreman is everything that we think he's going to be. Mario Williams, if you watched the Oklahoma spring game, I don't need to say much more about Mario Williams, the wide receiver. Number 42 overall player in this last recruiting cycle. Had 5 catches for 84 yards in the spring game. You could not take your eyes off of him if you watched that OU spring game. So I want to say some names here because this is a perfect situation, kind of like Oklahoma getting Eric Gray out of the transfer portal. He doesn't have to come in there and carry the ball 35 times a game. Well, Mario Williams doesn't have to face double and triple teams and carry a team. It's not that at all. You got Marvin Mims out there. You got Jaden Hazelwood. You've got, obviously, Mario Williams coming in. Mike Woods coming in via transfer. This is a tailor-made situation for a guy who's ultra-talented to come in and be featured in an offense that is conducive to his talent. And then number 2, be a complementary piece this year while guys like Mims shine. And eventually, you grow into that number 1 receiver role. At Oklahoma, they grow them on trees. And so you don't have to have true freshmen come in and save the day for you. We were talking about them at linebacker the other day, bringing in big-time linebacker talent. Once upon a time, if you were Oklahoma, you would have to hope and pray that true freshman defensive talent was going to work out for you. That's not the way it is anymore. You got guys like Nick Benito there. That's not the way it is anymore. Well, you got guys like Hazelwood and Mims and Woods there. You don't have to have Mario Williams shine. He's going to anyway, but you don't have to have it. Your life doesn't depend on it. And also, I want to go to Oxford, Mississippi. Taiwan Malone. Anyone remember this name? Because we were talking about him a lot during the recruiting process. Taiwan Malone was a name on the radar of Ole Miss, where he eventually ended up. A&M was hot after him. A lot of the big programs wanted Taiwan Malone. This is not some backup option that chose Ole Miss after other programs didn't have room for him. A lot of folks were going to make room for Taiwan Malone. I thought for a long time he was going to go to A&M, and he ends up staying with Ole Miss. He's 6'4", 305. He's not a guy that They've got to build physically. He's going to be ready to play this year. Now, here's the interesting thing about Ole Miss. They returned a couple of interior defensive linemen, but they were terrible last year. They sucked water through a garden hose. And so Malone's the kind of guy that's going to probably come in, albeit as a true freshman, and just be better than the options they have there now, which would produce a little thing called depth that they had none of. They didn't have frontline guys defensively, much less depth last year in Oxford. But the coaches are not shy. Like Partridge and his coaching staff over there, they weren't shy at all. Talking about not just Malone, but they got a couple of other JUCO guys, Isaiah Aiton and Gordon. They got them out of JUCO. These are all defensive linemen. I want you to just think about something for a second. I'm going to talk about Ole Miss later. Consider this, what do I want to call it? Consider this confluence of events happening for Ole Miss this year. You've got quarterback, you got offense. No one worries about offense with Ole Miss. But if guys like Taiwan Malone come in and they live up to their billing, the couple of other JUCO defensive linemen they got from the portal, or I guess they came from just transfers, I guess. I don't even know how do we refer to them now? All the defensive linemen they added. If they pan out, I had a little buddy of mine before I was driving into the station today or the studio asking, who's the sleeper team in the SEC? Well, it's Ole Miss by 10 miles. Because you could conceivably end up looking at Ole Miss saying they got the best quarterback in the conference this year. You could say that. You're never going to say that about Auburn. You're probably never going to say that about South Carolina or Tennessee this year. You could end up saying that about Ole Miss. But what you think about Ole Miss is doesn't matter. They're going to be all show. It's going to be all sauce. They're not going to have steak because they're not going to be able to stop molasses in December. Well, what if some of these dudes pan out on the defensive line? What if they're able to just force a couple of stops, force a couple of turnovers? You watched the Alabama game last year? They hung half 100 on them. It's not like they need a ton of them. They just need a few of them. What if Ole Miss is that? That's the hidden key to Ole Miss contending. The whole hidden key to Ole Miss being the biggest surprise contender in the country this year, not just the SEC, is these defensive linemen panning out. Because they got all the offensive boxes checked. From head coach right on down to the players on the field, they got all that checked. If some of these dudes pan out earlier than expected or better than expected defensively, man, it could be Ole Miss we're talking about as that surprise contender much later in the year than anyone expected.